It is our pleasure to welcome longtime NBC News personality, moderator of Meet the Press, now the host of the very popular and growing Chuck Todd cast. He is Chuck Todd. How are you, sir?
As I was saying, I'm personally fine, and in some ways, I guess I have the luxury to be concerned about the country. I don't have other personal conditions or health problems. My kids are doing great. I in that sense, I feel good, but I'm in pain. I mean, this is a painful moment.
This is hard, right?
Yeah.
And I'm glad you took the time to chat with us because I really appreciated some of the things you've been saying over the last few days, and I've been in a really weird spot with it, right? Because I'm as a conservative who's a former Republican and somebody who's been pretty antagonistic of Charlie Kirk over the years. It's hard to separate the things that I've said about him to the personality of or the personal nature of this and the fact that I'm horrified that his kids won't have a dad that comes home, and my kids are 3 and 9 months. I mean, they're not far in age from him, and I can't imagine the not so nice mail you've received over the years. I get a ton of it. This just feels like a really low spot in the history of our rhetoric. And I don't know where to go. And I usually have a list of questions. I just wanted to talk through this today because I don't even know where to go at this point. So I'm interested in your thoughts of where we are right now.
Well, here's the thing. We all kind of know what we should be doing, but in some ways, our we're going to have to give up hoping our political leaders are going to do the right things. There's a good Milton Friedman saying, and I'm going to mangle it, but as a good conservative, you probably have heard this, which is, it's not always about finding good people to make decisions. It's about creating good incentives that will allow any person to do the right thing. People don't, as human beings, we know this. Sometimes you need incentives to do the right thing. You need reward structures to do the right thing. And right now, all of our incentives are aligned against us to bring us together. All of the incentives are aligned against us to sort of figure out how to act bipartisan. I mean, just think about. So Charlie Kirk is gunned down the day before that we were commemorating the 24th anniversary of 9/11. And here's a question that I've been ruminating with. 9/11 is the last time we really got brought together as a country, and it lasted a good year or so. But even when we stopped being united, the wars divided us. It was respectful. Right? It was sort of conventional political debate. And
I don't know. There was a lot of calling George Bush a war criminal.
I'm not going to, by the way, this goes back to Vietnam. That stuff hasn't changed.
But I wouldn't say it was all respectful.
Right. But what we didn't have? This thing.
Yeah. Phones.
Okay. And I'm holding up for those of you that are listening only, I'm holding up the iPhone. And, the algorithms, I mean, this is where I don't, if you go online, most conservatives think most liberals are communists, and most liberals think most conservatives are fascists. If you go to the grocery store, I promise you that is not what people think in real life, right? The online world has us at each other's throats. The business model incentivizes it. It rewards it. Moderation doesn't get put up, right? It is instead like you could build an audience much faster if you go hard right or hard left, right? And so it's, I'm learning this myself being in this world, right? Where you sort of ride these opaque algorithms. But the one thing they all seem to do is they're all designed to keep us online, which then sort of it's outrage. And it's this cycle. And, we're, the other problem we have right now is we live in this we've created a gamesmanship political game of culture that says, if I admit that somebody on my side did something wrong, I'm giving the other side a win. So what has that led to? The left doesn't police the left and the right doesn't police the right. That is something that has changed. 10 years ago, 15 years ago, if there was a bad actor on one side or the other, there would be people that would speak out about it so that the totality would look bipartisan.
A literal Nazi got nominated for Congress in Illinois 10,
Mhm.
15 years ago, whatever it was, and the entire party infrastructure rebelled, right?
Mhm.
Got rid of this guy. I
Right.
don't know that happens today.
30 years ago, it's funny you bring up Illinois. I remember it's about 30 years ago that the LaRouches took
It was
over
86,
took over a couple of statewide ballot lines on the Democratic side. You saw sort of the same action, right? National Democrats worked with, I think, the Illinois got to make sure those guys don't win, right? These were threats to the liberal democracy, small L, right? When I'm speaking up here of liberal, it's liberal versus illiberal, right? Open speech, open debate, open society versus closed society, closed speech. That's when I'm using those terms. And this is where I don't know if this is a leadership problem. It's, I am exhausted from pointing fingers somewhere. Oh, it's here, when really it's all of us, right? We have to make a decision. When I was a kid, my dad used to, ask me about something, and I'd say, like, why I didn't do something, why I didn't take out the garbage, why, and I'd say, yeah, I know, but, and he'd go, no, I don't want to hear yeah, but, right? And that's the way I feel in this moment. I'm watching way too much of yeah, but. Yeah, we have some but this, right? Yeah, but no. If we but we are incentivizing to stay in our corners. And look, I accept the premise that there are folks on the left who say, yeah, we have our extremists, but we think those guys are worse. And I accept the premise that on the right, they say we may have our extremists, but those guys are worse. Okay. But we're never going to de-escalate if we don't come to terms with accepting that maybe we all don't see it the same way, but we do collectively realize it's a problem. Mm-hmm. And we've got to figure that out. We've got to figure out how to attack it. Again, I do think a huge problem is social media and the algorithm culture and the fact that, like, take the Matthew Dowd comment. Okay. Terrible thing that he said. What do we think? 125,000 people saw it in real time. It gets amplified on social media, right? It's my favorite new expression is nut picking. You know what I mean when I say that?
Yeah.
And that's what, frankly, both sides do this. They grab the nuttiest thing somebody says in one of these and somewhere online and says, grabs it, isolates it, right? Gets it to take off and go viral and say, that's all of them, right? This person, it was representative of this entire community, right? And, the right has been arguing that this has been happening way too often in mainstream media. And I know exactly, and my answer is yes, you're correct. But the answer isn't to do it, that it should be sort of mutual assured destruction, right? And that's where we're at, right? We're at mutual assured destruction now of each other. And look at the last 6 months. Yeah. We could sit here and everybody, there was this attack over here. This was a left-wing attack. Well, there was this attack over here. This was a right-wing attack. Guys, we have a problem. It's left and right. We got conspiracy theorists shooting up the CDC, and we've got conspiracy theorists shooting up ICE detention centers. This is a left and a right problem. Right,
it goes back to Gabby Giffords. It goes back to the Republicans at the congressional baseball game where my friend Rodney Davis, who I used to work for, was running for his life that day. It goes to January 6th. It goes to Melissa Hortman, Republican, Democrat. At some point,
they all
have
are?
to look inside.
We're Americans. Whatever happened to that?
It's a really frustrating moment. Former Meet the Press moderator Chuck Todd now hosts his own podcast. Joins us here on 97.7 and 970 WMAY. How do we turn down the temperature, Chuck? I've been thinking about this. I don't know if you know Stephen Richer from Maricopa County. He had a really, really comprehensive list on Twitter the other day of how people can do better. Mm-hmm. Certainly, no one's going to take it to heart, probably because of where we're at, but something has to change, and I just don't know how to do it.
Well, I mean, I think we all know that we've got the less time you spend on social media, the better. I mean, there was a time in the first half of my career at Meet the Press where I felt like what was happening on Twitter mattered. And there'd be times, I'll give you an example, and it was it took me a while to kick the habit. It's like quitting smoking, if you're an addictive personality. And I remember, I'd sit here and I'd get these days and I'd find out, oh, I'm trending. And I always knew that was bad news, right? There's never good that comes from trending, particularly if you're alive on Twitter. And when you're trending, you're just like, and it made me think, oh my God, everybody must be looking at me horribly. And I'd go to the grocery store thinking I had to wear a hat, and hide and all of this stuff. And then you realize nobody in the real world was really paying attention to that, right? And what happens with social media is it is so curated now to each of us individually that it makes us think what's happening to us is like greater and bigger than what's actually happening everywhere else. So obviously one is we've got to sort of like lay off the social media, right? Lay off the doom scrolling, lay off of all of that. I think we have to figure out how we regulate these algorithms. Okay. We're all for free speech, but that doesn't mean that our television advertising is filled with pornography, right? We can calibrate how amplified some of this stuff gets. But that's going to take bipartisanship, because one person's concern about limiting the ability for hateful rhetoric to go viral is another person's argument. Hey, that's censorship. But like, we can all agree we didn't want Al-Qaeda material. Remember back during the early teens, we were having that argument. Hey, we've got to really, and anytime there's a manifesto on YouTube from some mass shooter, we all believe we should take that down. I say we all believe. There are certain, true free speech, absolutionists, my libertarian friends might say, right? But for the most part, there's sort of a belief that you can live in a free society and decide collectively, hey, we don't want the spreading of a manifesto that essentially calls for the killing of people or rationalizes the killing of a group of people.
Or video of Charlie Kirk being shot in the neck.
Why haven't we pulled this?
Yeah, I don't get it.
Look, the NFL now, there was a player who broke his leg, I think it was last night in the Commanders-Packers game. And it was gruesome, right? We've all seen it. Guess what? Amazon showed it once, and then they didn't show it again. So if we can protect football fans from seeing a gruesome injury, what are you doing, Elon and Zuckerberg and all of you folks that run these things? The Chinese government with TikTok. Sorry, I'm going to go there on them. Take it down. We don't need to see this. And the more we desensitize violence, you know what that means. It only makes people more comfortable with it. And that's not healthy either.
It's and as one of the, last prominent conservatives in this state who's been anti-Trump for 10 years. So I'm a unicorn off on a rowboat in an empty sea somewhere. And there's been a lot of anger directed at me over the years, and certainly on this platform. And, I've talked to my wife about this. It's like, should I feel safe out there at times? I'm sure you've had that question over the years. It's like, we're to a point that something worse is going. I mean, my wife's a former TV reporter, and she was a morning show reporter when the incident in Virginia happened a decade ago. Yeah. That's the stuff that scares the hell out of you, that it could have been her. I mean, this is a new level of, can people like us speak our mind without fear of somebody walking up to us and shooting us on the sidewalk?
Well, the minute we accept that fear, which I fear too many people have. I mean, look, there's a lot of people on both sides of the aisle that know this is bad and need to speak out, and they won't do it for fear of hurting themselves politically. This gets back to the incentive structure issue. And until, there was a time where we punished a politician that didn't try to unify the country, right? It was just, that's bad politics. That's got to become bad politics again, right? And we don't have the political leaders to meet this moment, but there's one. I think Spencer Cox has met the moment.
He's been great. Right? He's been
Spencer Cox. He's been good on this issue for a while, on social media in particular. He's been trying to, he practices what he preaches. He just doesn't preach it. He practices it. And that's where I still have hope in our democracy. It's always in these moments like this where it's an audition for new leadership. And let me just say here, count me in. We need more Spencer Coxes right now.
Before we let you go, Chuck, and we can talk 2028 sometime if you're willing to come back. But
of course,
JB Pritzker on the national stage.
No.
We've seen the poly market numbers aren't great. We've seen the polling in some instances, good or bad. He's obviously positioning himself. Our governor is running for a third term. Thoughts on him from a national stage?
I'm a skeptic that he's going to get much traction. I mean, I just can't imagine this Democratic Party turning to a scion billionaire, right? To be the response to this, to the working class voter problem that the Democrats have. Look, he's been. I do think you have, and this is what I ultimately believe, that a successful candidate in 2028 is going to be somebody who practices politics differently than Donald Trump. But I understand in the moment, sort of emulating him is actually going to work in the moment, and it fires up the base and all of this stuff. And that's kind of where Gavin Newsom and JB Pritzker are sort of going on that side. I don't think that has a shelf life, but I get it feels like a sugar high for those guys right now. That's why I'm kind of a skeptic. And I look at sort of how Pritzker handled the law enforcement issue with Trump and how the governor of Maryland, Wes Moore, handled it. And I thought that was, the Democrats' biggest problem in 24 is they didn't accept the reality that people didn't like the economy, right? They kept trying to fight the perception. I think Pritzker put himself in a place where you're like, are you in reality? You could disagree with the tactics that Trump is using on law and order, but the goal is very popular. And I think that's where Democrats misunderstand Trump sometimes. They think when they see the public reject something Trump does, it's usually on tactics, right? The numbers on immigration. What they don't like is how he's doing it. They like the result, but they don't like how he's doing it. So you sit there and they see, oh, look, people are for immigration. Yes, they are. They also want a border that's under control. So I think that I ultimately think that Pritzker isn't thinking about that swing voter that Democrats couldn't win in 24. But, then again, you got to win a primary before you win swing voters. But right now, the Democratic primary electorate wants to see somebody fighting more. Although I am curious if this current situation, whether this changes, whether this galvanizes, makes the left angrier and they want more fighter in their nominee, or do you start to see more Democrats gravitate, look, no, we need a peacemaker, right? They want maybe the pastor from Texas or Wes Moore. And you're starting to see the party almost divide between those that want to fight fire with fire, right? You hear that expression a lot. And those that want to look at and hope that there's a different path in a post-Trump electoral environment.
Chuck Todd, plug your podcast.
It's the Chuck Toddcast. You can find it everywhere you get it. I'd love for you to subscribe on YouTube. We do it as a video podcast as well. Apple, Google, you name it. I even have a TikTok feed for the podcast. I don't put myself on TikTok. That's the line I drew there, but I guess I'm assuming the Chinese already have all my material as it is.
I don't have TikTok either for the same reason. And if my Illini and your Canes wind up in the playoff together, we'll have a beer or something.
I have to say, I'm an Illinois. I'm an Illinois skeptic, but prove me wrong next week, and I'll get on board the bandwagon. My mom went there for a year, so they're in my arena of college football teams I quietly pull for, and I don't understand why it's taken so long to get the Illini back. It is fun to see them competitive again.
It sure is. Chuck Todd, appreciate it. Thanks so much.
All right, brother.